Greetings. I'm Bertram de Souza, host of the Scribbler Publishing Group podcast that's streamed on WFMJ.com, the Scribbler Publishing Group's YouTube channel and Facebook page, and other online platforms. Tonight's edition features the individuals who have made the podcast possible. This holiday year-end gathering is my way of saying thank you to Cynthia Rickard, who served as my co-host on many of the podcasts, Robert McFerrin, the producer of the live and videotaped online broadcasts, Andy Kunkel, our technical director, and Megan Christensen, our computer guru. At this stage, I want to make clear that each of us has been vaccinated against COVID-19 and also have been tested occasionally. That's why we're comfortable breaking bread together. By the way, we're serving non-alcoholic drinks because we're coming to you from the special podcast studio in the 21 WFMJ building in downtown Youngstown. So let's begin this informal conversation with each of you telling the viewers a little about yourselves, and then we'll talk about some of our previous broadcasts over the past year or over the past year and a half. Let's start with Cindy, if you want to.
You always start with me. Well, I'm a retired editor of Vindicator, the Youngstown Vindicator, down the street, and have been involved in these podcasts for the past, year and a half?
Yeah.
About?
Yeah.
Sometimes willingly, sometimes not willingly. I think that I hope that we've provided some kind of service and a little bit more of history after the newspaper closed. So, and I've enjoyed actually working with all of you guys. That was the best part.
Yeah. Robert?
I'm Robert McFerrin. I've worked with Bertram and Cindy for many years at the Vindicator, recovering journalist. And
30 years.
but we do this just to keep, because again, we're all journalists that we enjoy what we do, and I've always enjoyed digging a little bit deeper into the story, see what the truth is, and finding out. And it's just a way to keep us all together and keep it going. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll be talking about how this all came about, and Robert's going to give us some Christmas surprises, which I'm looking forward to. But Megan, if you want to tell us a little about yourself, and by the way, Robert is head of Tribe Production Group, a division of 21 WFMJ, and Megan and Andy are, members of his staff.
His minions.
Yes. So go ahead.
They're the ones who make me look good.
Yeah. Or the ones who drive him crazy on occasion.
That's why I drink.
My name's Megan, and I have been with Tribe Production Group since pretty much its very inception, 10 years ago. And I am the senior editor / I can't remember what my title is now, visual effects artist / interactive designers, I know, / media goddess. I keep saying that one, and they never put it on my card.
I like that.
And brownie maker.
Yes,
like
and brownie maker.
Yeah.
/ super
You should have
K-pop
media
fan.
goddess on your business card.
Right?
Yeah.
And I edit and do all the finishing touches and make things look pretty. So, yeah.
Awesome. Andy, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Andy. I've been here at Triad since 2017. I was part-time for the 2 years prior, working in this room, actually. It's kind of completely different than what it looks like now. I still have to do some kind of studio tour sometime, but that's for a later time. And my primary role is basically in the physical realm, whereas Megan's in the digital realm of that. I'm in the physical realm when it comes to all the things, equipment, cameras, lights, audio, and stuff like that. And I also do other videography stuff on the side too. So I try to stay busy.
Yeah, the Scribbler Publishing Group was created by me when we published the book No Holds Barred, which contains about 300 of the columns I wrote during my 40 years of the paper. Cindy was the editor. Robert was the designer of the book. And so the book was dedicated to the 150-year-old newspaper, the Youngstown Vindicator. the podcast started when a group of us, senior, members of the Youngstown Vindicator staff, decided to get together to have a conversation about the paper after it closed on August 31st, 2019. Honestly, I was thinking back last night, and I thought, this is going to be a one-off. We'll sit down, we'll talk about it, and go through this thing and all of that. And here we are in December of 2021, and we've done quite a few of these. Yeah. And the reason being, after that first one, Robert and I sat down, and so because Robert's, with head of Triad, which is FMJ, Robert said something about, hey, because of our background, because of our experience, perhaps there are issues we can continue talking about, even though we don't have the newspaper. Because that was our avenue to discuss issues. My column, Cindy was the editor, Robert did the design on especially page one design. And I never thought that, we would be continue until Cindy recently announced to me that by the end of this month, she's no longer going to be available when I need her.
Well, I'm still waiting for the last podcast that we weren't able to get in this year. So
which we will do next year.
Yes.
We will talk about that.
Yeah.
So Robert will give us some. How many have you done of these? And we'll talk about some of the issues that we took on. But after you've told us how many we've done, you've got some stats that might be of interest.
Approximately, it's more than 20.
Okay. I think the last one was 23.
I think 23 is the number.
What was our first one? Do you have that?
Our first, Bertram announced online that he was going to do a book.
Oh.
And it reached 42 people.
Yeah.
And that was our first attempt to say, hey, we're still here.
Right.
There's 42 people. I'm sure we're all family members. Our first podcast was actually the very next day after we announced the book, which we talked about the Youngstown Vindicator's voice for the Valley, which actually had almost 600 listeners. So that was our first one. We did audio only.
Right.
And so that was
that's right, yeah.
So we kind of wanted to see.
Right.
And
Was GM our first one?
No, that was actually our next one.
That was the next one.
So,
that was 2 years ago.
Yep. So in January, and that was the first one in 2020 that we did the GM and the Sleight of Hand, and actually that one where we talked about GM, they're closing here, and the electric cars and the future of that.
Yeah.
That had almost 4,000 views.
Yeah.
So that was when we realized, okay, we do still have an audience,
Right.
and we can do something with this. And so then that's when we moved into the Mafia. And we did a two-parter on the Mafia.
Right.
And it's funny, they're both very well viewed, but part two with Paul Gaines has always been slightly better.
I was going to say, that's the one that I have always remembered.
Yeah.
That was the most interesting, I think.
And people are still sending comments about it. I mean,
6 days ago, someone just posted a new comment on
Did
there. They go through and like to speculate on who killed Joey Naples.
Right. And we had to sort of do magic with that, because in the discussion with the retired FBI agent,
some information revealed.
Some names came up, and so Andy and Robert and I sort of talked about it and decided we better eliminate those references.
The same old journalistic standards that you guys lived with at the Vindicator.
Yeah.
Continues on into the podcast.
So of all your video podcasts and audio podcasts, you have now reached almost 37,000 views. In 2 years.
What does that mean? Is it?
Well, you had 42 people to begin with. So, I think we're doing pretty good. I was like, I'm very happy with the numbers. I'm very happy with the topics we've chosen because we started off, and again, we were all learning on this because we wanted to do this. We'd done podcasts over at the Vindicator when we started, but now we were breaking, with the new team here, but we wanted to do video because that's what we did here, and so we started looking at new avenues, new ways to feature, to try to find sponsors for it, to break out and hit new topics. So we did some of the classics in season 1, then season 2. That's when we started going really with a lot of live on timely things. So something happened, we reacted to it quickly, and I mean we had several. I mean,
that was after the Historical Society, their sponsorship ended.
Right in the first season. Our first live debate was actually the Youngstown Mayor Democrat debate.
Right.
That was our first live one. But this year alone, for lives, we did the Holy Communion live.
Right.
with the debate on who of the Catholics can
Right.
get communion.
Yeah.
We had the Youngstown Under Siege 3-parters that
Yeah.
were live, and all offered challenges. We did live the sports betting, and then we also did just recently YSU Future, the
Yes.
2-parter.
Yes.
So we've done a lot of live things that we're reacting to news as it happens. It's
Yeah.
not, we're with like the history ones. We take time. We get archive photos from the Vindicator archives and place them in. But with these, we've been more responsive to into community needs of what's going on in our community and what we could be reactive to.
Yeah.
And I think that's, from our vantage point, I think we've been selective in what we've done. And also, there are a lot of people who just do a podcast every day. I mean, and it's just, quick, dirty, just throw something out there.
Yep.
And I'd rather we didn't do that. I'd rather
Yeah.
we do the kinds of things we do where there's in-depth discussion. Like the mayor's, the Democratic primary that we did live. All of the candidates said that was the best forum that they had attended, and it lasted 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Against the
Even
mayor.
though the mayor said he was going to stand for
And then
an
the mayor
hour.
was done with that, unless we got him a seat.
But they actually said, they were given the opportunity to explore issues in depth, which is, it goes back to our history at the newspaper, where we used to do the editorial boards.
Right.
And so I think, perhaps there are things we can do to better tweak the thing. But I think our philosophy seems to be working. And, the two of you were sort of brought in kicking and screaming. because, but I do appreciate the fact, and I have to make this clear, none of these people is paid for the time they put in to do these podcasts. And I'm truly grateful for that. Even this sort of holiday fair that we're having tonight is really not adequate to say thank you. It's it has helped me a great deal knowing that there are people that I can depend on. I keep telling I'll leave you all in my will. but no,
You'll
this
each
is
get a signed copy of his book.
right.
Please, I've always wanted one of those.
You don't have a book?
I do. No, I'm sorry.
You were about ousted from the podcast.
You were almost going to get another one.
I know.
But no, this is and even putting the book together, Cindy and Robin. I mean, for a
That was
year.
a Herculean task.
Yeah,
These
a
aren't
year.
quite as strenuous,
Yeah,
but
and-
I think that these really have served a great purpose since we don't have the investigative reporting that we had at the paper. Because I listen to a number of podcasts, and the New York Times, the Daily, and the Washington Post that they put out every day, they do this kind of thing on a national level. And because of the technology that we have now, we've been able to have guests from all over the country,
Yep.
and we could have them from all over the world. We did invite
Washington
somebody from the
Post,
Vatican.
Former.
Right.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
had the president of the Catholic Democrats
Right.
out of Boston.
Yep.
Right.
And we had
Marty
I can't
Barron?
think of her name,
Oh.
We had Marty Barron, the
Yeah, Marty
retired,
Barron.
the retired
Marty Barron, of course.
executive editor of the Washington Post.
Right, yeah.
He came in.
He was an interesting one. I wish
Very
I would have
much
been.
so.
I wish I would have pinned him down a little bit more on how much I thought the national press fell down in their coverage of the Trump administration. And, I asked him about that, but I should have pressed him a little bit more about that because, especially now, it's becoming more and more clear how much was unknown and let go during those 4 years. But the woman scholar on the Catholic podcast was
Right.
the one I was referring to, and I can't think of her name, unfortunately. But I thought she was really interesting because here's a Catholic scholar who's teaching at a Mormon university.
Yeah.
So, we've been able to have national guests and, hopefully provide the kind of investigative reporting that is lacking right now elsewhere.
And Megan and Andy can weigh in here because in the end, if it's on tape, if you're taping it, you guys are the ones who sort of get to fiddle with it, to make it good, or even if you're going live. And I just want to know, because you're not newspaper people, have those podcasts been of interest? Have they sort of have you found that this is something that you would be interested in continuing to watch? Because I think that's in the end that's what we're trying to figure out is
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a lot of times my interest in what I do with my work definitely evolves over time.
Right.
And when I started working here at WFMJ, just as a simple video editor, and I never really considered myself like someone like a journalist or even someone around journalism or something, but I still tried to inform myself. I still tried to keep up with current events and stuff like that. And then I remember for a little while in 2019, I was thinking podcast might be the next thing that we could possibly get into. Kind of sat on there for a little bit, but then when you brought it up, it's like, hey, well, why don't we try it out? So I'm like, okay, that sounds good. I still don't really, I mean, I don't consider myself a journalist, but I guess I would say I might be someone that can,
Maybe a news hound now?
well, like someone that helps facilitate it, I guess, and it's something that I guess I could say I am proud of, because we have covered a lot of things that are very important, especially in the second season, when we we went from 2% live in the first. I don't think we did any live in the first. One, and almost all of them in the second one were live. And that has been, it's been pretty important topics.
I mean, the ones that are produced, that's
the YouTube sent us the year-end sort of stat.
So his numbers were saying that that for views of the Mafia podcast with Paul Gaines has been viewed for 358.1 thousand minutes and had more than 29,000 total views of that one podcast.
And that's just for this year.
That's total.
Oh, total.
Yeah, so
okay,
that's
okay.
yeah. So well, it's saying this year, 2021.
Okay.
Right.
So we
That's
could have
still
had
a lot
more
considering. You have
last
to
year.
consider how old that story is.
That's pushing 2 years old. We did it in March of 2020. It's going to be 2022.
Well, I mean, the podcast is 2 years old, but the story itself is years
It's
old.
timeless.
And that's the difference when we do a produced one that we do history topics. They don't ever go away. They continue to get watched. When we do time-sensitive ones, mayor debates, those, the numbers you reach that day are going to be pretty much, you'll get a few weeks after that,
Or
but then
within
after that,
the
they're
next
done.
few days.
And what happens too is, and because of our knowledge of this area, our collective knowledge, the Mafia podcast, part 1 and 2, got a lot of attention, and then gave rise to Robert and I having a discussion, and Cindy, about what else can we do with organized crime and all of that. And I have a friend who we have nicknamed the Bug Man. And he finally agreed to sit down for a conversation about his life with gambling and
the bug, which was a gambling.
And it's going to be, we're going to air it shortly.
Yep.
Megan has spent countless hours on the computer listening to this, watching it, and even transcribing and also doing subtitles.
Yep.
Because we've had to,
alter his voice.
we had to alter his voice.
And it's so interesting, I think it's going to be, I think people are really going to be interested in it, particularly because of the response that we've gotten to the Mafia podcast. And this one, even when you live in this town, I mean, you guys are a lot younger, so I don't know how much you knew of that part of our history, but even when you live in this town, and we covered it for years and years, hearing somebody who was actually involved in it years ago, I think he was around when the Jungle Inn was around, wasn't he?
Yeah, because he started in the late 50s.
Yeah, and hearing him, I mean, my grandmother used to go to the Jungle Inn, I remember the stories, and hearing somebody who's still here talk about how that was all handled, handing over the paper bags, and, I had some relatives that were involved in the same kind of shady deals.
It was interesting when they would get too many bets and how they could counter the bets to make sure they didn't lose
Right.
money, which I found fascinating.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, and he's 85, and so the people of his age, and even perhaps a little younger, will recognize what he talks about.
Yeah.
And he had some great stories.
He talks about a lot of the different buildings,
Yes.
and he had a very interesting career in
Yes,
life
he
here.
did.
I mean, it wasn't just running illegal gambling.
Yes.
He did a lot of burlesque work. He did
Absolutely.
Yeah.
there's a
He
lot
wasn't
of
dancing in burlesque.
he was
managing.
He managed the burlesque,
Yeah.
and businesses that
Don't
we've
tell
heard
them
of.
too much about it. They still
Yeah,
got
but it's going to be on.
Yes.
We're going to air that, and I think that sort of it's like the sort of the icing on the cake of the Mafia podcast, because it puts in perspective the history of this region. Somebody who actually ran a bug house.
Yeah.
And
Who was
talked
involved
about
in that? I thought it was interesting, though, that he said that he didn't work for the mob.
Yeah, I know.
He knew them. I didn't work for them.
And so, we're going to try and do more of that, and try and figure out, what other avenues we can pursue. Obviously, somebody who looms large with the Mafia is Jim Trafficant, the late congressman. 40 years ago is when he, launched his bid for sheriff.
Yep.
And we are going to do a podcast, a retrospective on his career. And, obviously what loom large is the trial. And we've got the actual tape
Yes, we do.
of his conversation, when he sat down with the Carabbiers. And we're going to use that, and we're going to use, the Vindicator, several full pages of the conversation, the text.
We have boxes on him.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
I
that's
should
just
give a
gonna be-
shout out to Mark Brown, too, for giving us access to
Yes.
the
To
archive.
use the archives.
Photos and-
the former general manager, his mother was the publisher, Betty Barnes Jack now. Mark has been very kind in not only giving us access to the archives, to the morgue, but also giving me space at the Vindicator building to actually do the book, and all of that. And then it still continues.
Yeah, Sweetwood says you still live there.
Yeah.
He and Louis.
But I also need to point out that as the popularity of these podcasts grew, WFMJ, Mona Alexander, sort of started talking to Robert about the possibility of streaming a podcast on WFMJ.com. So that has also given us greater access, and so I think that's going to be.
And I think that's kind of where we said we started off experimenting to see where we want to go, and as we got more newsworthy, that we were hitting the mark of what we needed to, we became an asset for WFMJ.com as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think the one that we did on with Rose Carter.
Oh yes,
And the live community event that
Right.
Oh,
she
yeah.
held. I mean,
Youngstown under siege.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
With the
That was-
crime in Youngstown.
Yeah, and there was a pretty big turnout for that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's pretty obvious that the community is interested in still exploring those kinds of things and hearing about them.
And honestly, the whole Youngstown crime thing, it came up before the election, and there was an assumption that the mayor was in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Because this was under his watch.
Yeah.
I mean, all this spike in murders and homicides, and it was under his watch. And we had him and the police chief who came on, and talked about the initiatives they're launching. But it turns out that the voters of Youngstown still trust Tito Brown. And so he's been reelected.
Well, at
to
least
another
trusted
term.
him more than the other two candidates
Exactly,
who were running,
right.
because I mean, putting somebody politically inexperienced in at a time like this,
Right.
even though there might be some complaints against Tito's administration, he still does have the experience behind him of dealing with this, and the other two candidates would have been coming in cold.
Yeah. Has it been fun for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially the
The food.
food. I am here for the food. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. No, well, when I went to university, I studied film. I mean, it was media communications, but I studied film within that, and so I do like the longer format longer produced ones where I
Right.
can, tell a story and be able to find those, pictures.
Oh, so maybe
and
you can make a
things,
film
and
about Bertram.
so, yes, I'm writing the script right now. I'll need to get your input.
I'll be happy to offer.
I worked for pizza.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and thankfully, I mean, Rob gives me a lot of leeway to be able to, because there are times like with this Bugman one that we've got coming up, we don't show his face, and
Right.
so I had to come up with a way to cut away from Bertram,
Yeah.
So it wasn't just
Just his face.
all Bertram all the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Now,
So,
Bertram did want that.
That-
but,
Yes. Yes.
With all the money I paid you, I'm not going to be on.
So it was fun trying to come up with different ways to convey the story or keep the flow going, so that
Keep the
it didn't-
interest going without
Yes.
without showing his
Exactly.
face, because
Yes.
that's not easy.
yeah.
Yeah,
The
but
other
putting
thing-
in those historical
Yeah.
pieces and,
The other one that
helps.
also got a lot of interest was Ohio's move. They already passed the legislation now to legalize sports betting.
Oh,
It's on Governor DeWine's desk. By the way, the last story I saw, and it is in the legislation, you can also bet on college sports, which is going to be, because Ohio State being one of the top colleges, it's going to be really huge. We had a two-parter on that.
Three.
Three.
Three
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah,
on
because
that.
we talked with the man who did the legislation,
Right.
and then
Senator,
Dana Bullish from FMJ
right,
come
yeah.
in.
That's
and
right,
then,
yeah.
And so what we're going to do next year, and Robin and I have talked, and we're still trying to figure it out, is once it's legal to bet on sports in Ohio, we're thinking of a regular segment where we bring in some guys men and women, I'm sure there are women out there, who have gambled, who have bet, even though it's been illegal in Ohio, and sit down and talk about, as the games are coming up, so these are the games on Sunday.
Right.
How are you going to bet on these? What's the line? What's the odds and all of that?
Will they win as much money now that it's legalized?
Well,
as
no.
it becomes
When you're betting illegally, when you're
The
betting
cuts are
with a
bigger.
bookie,
Yep.
and you win, you don't pay tax
Right.
because it's off the books.
Yeah.
Here, after a certain amount, you're going to have to pay taxes on your winnings.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be, this region is going. It's going to be very popular in this region, because even now, I mean, I'm
Everybody and their brother in this area, except for me.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. I mean, have you ever been in an office where there wasn't a sports pool?
we used to have football pools at the Vindicator.
Oh my God!
We had a bookie at the Vindicator.
I was going to say, yeah, she used to have polls. She used to have those things on everything that was coming up. Somebody was going to have a baby. Okay, what day do you take in?
How many pounds?
Yeah.
A woman who didn't have a job that needed to be on the phone, but she was always on that phone.
So that's coming up, and I think that's going to be an interesting issue for us to look at. Obviously, the U.S. Senate race next year, where Tim Ryan is seeking the Democratic nomination. Republican Senator Rob Portman isn't going to run again. So that's a wide open one.
And the advertising has already started.
Oh my
absolutely.
God!
A lot of money being
It's
spent.
being bombarded, but I haven't seen Ryan.
No.
I see him mostly on social media.
Right, he's doing his
He's all
own.
over social media.
So
Because
he's going
I
after
think
the
he
younger
doesn't
crowd.
have
Yeah.
he doesn't have the kind of competition, even though there is somebody else running
In
for
the
in the
primary,
primary.
yeah.
You're
It's
right.
not
Yeah.
as active a
You'll see
race
him
as
more
the
in the fall.
Republicans.
Yeah.
The Republicans and big top
They're-
names, and they're
Well,
all going for Trump.
Because a lot of them
Trump's
aren't
message.
known names,
Yeah,
so
right.
they're trying to get their names out there
Oh,
so they become
absolutely.
known.
Yeah, because I've seen the commercials and I didn't know
Yeah.
any of the names before.
then, of
I
course,
heard
the
of them.
book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
J.D. Vance
Yeah.
is the one. I think that might be in the front runner for the Republican nomination.
Well,
There's
sure, but
a
there's
guy named
Timken.
Marino.
Marino,
Is it
he's a businessman.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
I'm not sure.
If I'm correct, and I think he's the businessman who, I did a column about him because before, when GM had talked about closing Lordstown, he had submitted a proposal to GM where he would have bought 100,000 cruise. He wanted to start a fleet.
Oh, is that the guy?
I think it's the same one. Yeah.
Huh.
And
Oh,
I heard this
remember
from
that.
I heard it from, and I wrote about it. I
Yeah.
heard this from a union rep. But I think so. We're going to have
And
politics.
GM
obviously.
wouldn't respond to
No,
that. That's
no.
right. Mary Barra wouldn't respond
No.
to that. I remember. Yeah.
So we're going to have politics, but the one that Cindy wants, what we wanted to do this year, we're not able to, but we will do next year, is abortion. No, I'm sorry, is the effort by old white males to take away a woman's right to choose.
It's not just old white males
I know.
because,
I
mean,
realize
Texas,
that.
my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Texas has a lot of pro-life women down there. I don't get it, but
But the
but those cases that are, you know, before the Supreme Court, and they've kind of kicked the first one down
Right.
down the road. But the Mississippi case,
the ruling in June is going
Yeah,
to
the
determine
Mississippi,
whether or
yeah.
not
Yeah.
you know Roe v.
and it will
Wade.
definitely affect Ohio and about
Absolutely.
13 other states that have, you know, they're ready to go.
Yes.
Oh,
They're-
yeah.
If Roe v.
Ohio
Wade
already
gets
had that
overturned,
heartbeat
yeah,
legislation.
they're
Yeah.
going to just
Right.
they're going to eliminate it.
So
completely.
we are going to do. We're going to focus on those because I think those are important. That abortion issue is very important, and it sort of needs to be fully discussed, as opposed to.
Yeah, I think we need to discuss how we could flip it, you know, so that men would be affected more than women, and then see how it comes out.
Yeah. Well, there was that state legislator who.
Yes.
I wrote a column
Yeah,
about her.
yeah,
Who talked about
Yeah.
she felt so bad for these men, so she wanted to push legislation so that to help them with you know erectile dysfunction and stuff like that. Because it was,
And I read something somewhere where they said, you know, maybe we should just have every man get a vasectomy, and then if they decide that they want to have kids later, then they can have it reversed. But they would be forced to have the vasectomy, which is basically, you know, turning the tables on the whole thing.
yeah, I you know, what disturbs me, it's sort of, everybody talks about abortion as though this is actually a woman's right, you know, and it's ironic that the same people who are opposed to a woman having the right to choose
Have
are
control
now
of their own
saying,
body.
my body, my choice when it comes to vaccination
Yeah.
on COVID.
Yeah.
So, you know, the hypocrisy is there. And I think that's what I would, you know, if next year, I think we need to sort of, you know, spotlight or highlight that hypocrisy.
Yeah, for
because
sure.
it's an important issue and,
Yeah.
and one that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
What else did you, we're going to be doing trafficking. We're going to do,
we had several other ideas we tossed about the other day, saying that we wanted to plan for next year. I think next year will be very exciting.
Well, especially with the 2022 election coming up, I mean, the whole voting rights issue,
right.
you
Another
know, I
one.
think is just going to continue to heat up as we get closer to the election. And you know, I've been reading more and more about it's not even so much the restrictions that are being put on individual voters to vote, you know, which is a huge issue, but actually how state legislatures across the country are being set up so that they can object to the results of an election,
Right.
overturn
Yeah.
it, kick
Right.
it back to the
Yes.
legislatures.
Right, yeah.
I mean, that seems to me to be an
It's very
even
dangerous.
Oh, yeah, well,
more dangerous,
We're
yeah.
still battling
effort.
over our districts.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. And
There
the
is a disturbing,
gerrymandering, yeah.
a very disturbing trend, and what's going on politically in this country, and in fact, the lawsuit that's been filed by some locals challenging the congressional lines and all of that, and the lawyer Percy Squire was along with Judge Judge Douglas at the time. He wasn't the judge then. They filed that lawsuit that challenged the state legislative districts in Mahoney County, and actually the Vindicator and Percy will acknowledge this, took a very, very strong stand in support of their lawsuit. I covered it. I went all the way to the 6th U.S. District Court of Appeals in Cincinnati, and basically that was when the judges said that a minority-majority district is necessary, because what Percy was able to show through data and statistics, that the history of voting in the Mahoning Valley is such that blacks will vote for white candidates, but whites will not vote for black candidates who are running countywide, and therefore you've never had a black county commissioner.
Well, yeah, that's true. You haven't.
And he that was a very powerful argument. They showed those when they had that discussion in the court, and he says, here's the data, and then that's why we need a district where at least a black candidate has the chance of winning, because of the concentration of the black vote.
Yeah, there's several lawsuits, I think, have been filed against the redistricting, the new district lines. I mean, some of them, I think it's Jim Jordan's district. It looks like a snake around Columbus.
It's a duck.
I mean, it's
The shape of a duck.
it's I don't know how those things can be upheld. I don't get it.
And then we're going to do some
got
fun
control.
things.
And the Johnson's district too.
Right,
There's
yes.
6 counties
This-
involved
yeah.
in his district, aren't there?
It goes from
The one
Columbia
fun-
all the way to Marietta or something.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's supposed. Is it being
That's like
expanded
4 hours
since
away.
we lost
Yeah.
a seat?
The one fun one we talked about doing is Bertram wanted to show the odds of gambling at the casino
Yeah.
versus the Ohio lottery,
So
and
we're-
which gives you better odds.
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
right. What we're going to do is take $5 scratch-off tickets, and we're going to sit around and scratch.
This is going to be really exciting viewing.
and then we're going to take a like amount of money and go to the casino, and use a $5 slot machine, and see which ones
Do
which
they
is
have
a better
$5
bet.
slot machines?
Yes. Oh,
Should
yes.
bet on the horse with the blue blinders.
But then we also,
Shameless plug for the About Man podcast coming up soon.
but the one that I think would also get a lot of attention is blind taste tests. And I came up with that idea because I saw the latest Wendy's commercial on its French fries, and said their French fries are better than
Woody,
McDonald's.
are you hoping that they're going to get like a year's worth of fast food
So we're going
delivered
to
to the house? We'll never have to leave the house again.
We're going to do blind
Leave
taste
that
tests
out of
on
the
pizza,
sponsorship pitch. It's like, what are you going to use this money for? Fast food?
pizzas, wings, French fries, sort of.
Yeah.
And I think people would be interested too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Food's a big part of the Mahoning Valley.
Oh, absolutely.
It really is.
Yeah, huge.
So-
Yeah.
Because I think for us, we have flexibility. And I think that's an advantage. And also, we're not restricted time-wise.
The one thing we did to Vindicator a long time ago, and I always thought was good, was we took area grocery stores and we created a list, and then we went shopping. Do you remember this?
No, I don't remember that
and
one.
we compared which grocery store actually gave you the most for your money based on a normal shopping list.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting
Yeah.
because you always assume that
Is quality a factor in that one? Like,
of course.
I'm just saying, like,
we could use your drone to go into the grocery store.
no, what I mean, like, say, like with that grocery list, how about is like quality a factor in
Well,
that one, or is it just value?
wasn't it? It was not. It was dry goods, wasn't it?
I think it was a little bit of everything.
Oh,
I
was
think
it?
I think we
Okay.
bought milk and
Right.
things,
Oh,
but we had,
really?
yeah, it was the same list. It had to be like had to be
just think
matching.
The
with
same brand
same
and all of
brands
that,
and all that.
yeah.
So it was
Oh,
kind of a
okay.
comparison of it to see
Yeah.
what store would it cost,
Yeah.
and how much you would save by going certain if you actually shopped around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially now with inflation.
Right, because everything
oh my
is
God,
everything
everything's
costs so much more.
higher.
So,
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
yeah.
That's a good one. I mean, just anything that I guess the public can participate in,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then that's another thing I think we've tried to do is, if viewers have ideas for podcasts, future podcasts, let us know. I mean, you can go onto our website, you can go on the YouTube channel, send us a note, whatever. Because I think there are some issues out there that we might be forgetting
Oh, yeah.
that might be
Yeah.
of interest to people. So, but again, I appreciate all your help. It has been a good year. I'm not saying I'm going to be around next year, but after this big discussion, no. I think we can.
He's
I'm
been threatening to leave for 40 years.
I have. But I'm hoping that we can continue this, because I think we are getting more people who are recognizing the stuff we are doing, and through your efforts, all the four of you, I really think that, and it's also quality. People. In early days, we were having problems with sound and problems with focus and stuff like that. But now
we were on a learning
growing
curve.
pains.
Yeah.
Growing pains.
Yes,
We're on a learning curve.
Yes.
But have you guys, since you're so much younger, have you learned a lot about the area through these? More than you knew?
Well, not having grown up from this area. My dad was pastor, so I'm kind of like a military brat. I've moved
you've
around
moved
a
all
lot.
around?
Yeah.
And we only moved here, well, we lived in Trumbull County for 4 years in the 80s, but then we came back 2003. And so yeah, it's been fascinating because some of these things, people are like, oh yeah, my uncle went there and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I have no connection to any of this.
Yeah.
This is fascinating though. So yeah, it's been really fun to discover all this.
Yeah,
And it's been interesting to see how much history this man has in his head.
right.
Yeah.
It is insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Insane. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, I've lived in this area all my life. I grew up in McDonald, went to YSU, graduated from YSU.
you played in the band.
Yeah, a few
At the
bands.
YSU band, did you?
No, not YSU. I was a trumpet player for
at
McDonald,
McDonald.
but I
Oh,
was in
cool.
a couple of actual bands, like a bass player and stuff
were
like that.
you?
So yeah, that was a lot
Oh.
of fun. So I've seen a lot of different types of cultures and like different. Yeah, it's just very. I remember the old Cedars down here. I really
Yeah.
miss
Oh, yeah.
it being
I
in
do
there.
too.
It's
I
such an
know.
awesome building.
Yeah.
But as my life progresses, working downtown, I've only been working here for 7 years. I feel like year after year, my knowledge of Youngstown just accelerates.
Yeah.
And with this podcast, it's definitely accelerated to such an extent, and especially working under you and hearing all the things you have to say and you have to say from all the stories that you have done for the
Well, I
Vindicator.
think that was the real strength of the Vindicator,
Yeah.
was the body of experience.
Yeah. Right,
Because
yeah.
when I started there, Bertram started a year after I did, and the guys that were there were like in their
Right.
70s and 80s, and the editorial writers, I mean, they had that wealth of knowledge that they didn't even have to look things up when they wrote their
Yeah.
editorials. So. And when you work with those people, you do learn a lot,
And I think that's one of the rare things about the Vindicators. Most newspapers, people came and left from newspapers all the time.
Yeah.
The Vindicator, we had like some of the least seniority people. They were 25
Right.
years,
Yeah.
so it's a
until the end,
Until the end,
until the
yeah.
industry
Yeah.
started tanking.
Yeah.
People. Well, when I got in as an intern, I was just shocked because nobody left the Vindicator. I mean, it
to
was
get into the Vindicator
it was
an accomplishment.
nobody
yes.
left the Vindicator.
Yeah.
These guys had been there for their entire lives.
Yeah.
Everybody was a lifer there.
They actually went into the military, came out,
Yeah.
and continued there.
Yeah.
So it was
Wow.
like, because of this age difference, if you guys, the two of you and your friends, I mean, I'm sure you'll have relatives, friends, and all that. If you can come up if you have some ideas for the podcast, let us know, because I think we're also trying to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I just don't want it to be a
You know
historical
what would be a
thing.
great one? Let's
Right.
get Bertram on an Xbox playing a game and see how it's done. That'd be awesome.
Let's get Bertram trying to turn on a
have
smart
never-
TV.
I've never played a video game.
I'll just,
Let's have, we were talking about inflation. We'll go with Bertram as he buys
To
a
buy
new
the
TV.
Yeah,
These are the
he's
best
never played a video
ones.
game.
Yes.
He's never bought anything on Amazon. He's never ordered anything online.
I'll do that trick that I used to do with my younger brothers, plug my controller in, leave his off, and just kind of it's like, whoa, Bertram!
Yeah.
Well, listen, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year. You're going to be going off on vacation.
Yeah,
and
like,
then
I just got a lot
but
of
so it'll
time
be
used up.
the last
He's got a
one
lot
we
of time added up because all the work
Yeah.
has been doing
yes
for
for
you.
us yeah. The
gonna
last
go to
one we're going to
Michigan. No, we
air
got a
is
podcast to shoot.
the Bugman will be on,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
that will be our our year end.
Do we have a target date for the release of that yet?
Should be quickly.
Very soon.
Yeah,
Days.
it should be
Yeah,
days.
it'll be
Days.
within
Yeah.
a few days.
And we'll set up, we'll do a promo and stuff like that. We all. Oh, by the way, the other one I do want to do is given the ongoing debate at YSU over the future of the university and the loss of enrollment and revenue and all of that. I do think we need to generate a discussion about the future of athletics at YSU,
And
whether or
betting.
not YSU should.
And what?
And betting on them.
Yeah.
YSU should
What a time
continue
for that to
having
go away.
should continue having intercollegiate sports, football, basketball.
Mm-hmm.
There are universities that don't have teams, and they're doing well because these
I know, but
these
half of the north
programs.
side is now sports fields.
Yeah.
These teams do not generate enough money to be self-sufficient.
We can easily convert
And
those into
that's-
Amazon warehouses.
Exactly.
These are those
So I do want to thank our viewers for continuing to stay with us. We've been growing, slowly but surely, and I think next year we can look forward to some good programming. Thank you again, and we'll see you next year.